Alright, so I'm going to try and do a quick tips video on helping you guys pass your Class Bs if you're having any issues or passing your skills tests and stuff like that. I'll try to keep it brief. You know, my videos can be a little lengthy, but I'll try to give you guys pertinent information. So, first things first, you got to take a written test. You got to get your learner's permit if you're interested in becoming a bus driver for any company. Even if you have a company that will train you, you still have to have your learner's permit before they can start to train you. So getting a learner's permit involves passing your written test. Now it may be different in your state, but in the state of California, you have to get your Class B commercial driver's license. You have to get a passenger endorsement, and some companies require a air brakes. Some companies don't. Some companies, especially if you're going to be a school bus driver, requires a school endorsement. Some companies don't. You know, just because you're going for a school bus driver job doesn't mean you have to have air brakes. You know, so it really depends on your company requirements. But for you, if you want the most options to work for, whether you're, you know, driving a small shuttle or trying to go for Greyhound, get your passenger endorsement, get your air brakes. Okay, if you want to go for a school, you still need passenger. You might still need air brakes if you want to drive the larger buses, and you're going to need the school endorsement. Okay. Also be aware that when you go take the test for your Class B, if you just have a regular Class C or a Class M motorcycle license, you're gonna have to retake those tests again because they classify it as an upgrade. And when you do an upgrade, you got to do the previous test. So you're gonna have to take your Class B commercial license, and you're gonna have to take a Class C, and if you have any other deals like motorcycle, you're gonna have to take that again. So you have to take all those tests. So first step is study. You're going to have to study the bloody books. I did a lot of focus testing. And focus testing is basically, instead of just studying the books, you study a lot of the test questions. I used a program online. I think it was just dmvtest.org. And then you can select your specific state, and it just has a bunch of examples that, you know, they found on the test. And I pretty much found that all the questions that were in the example questions were on the DMV test. And basically all you're doing is you're taking the test over and over again until you get more and more questions right. It tells you which questions you got wrong. It gives you a brief summary explaining why those answers are right, why those answers are wrong. And you just kind of keep taking the test over and over again. You know, it's kind of like just, you know, you're using memorization. And it becomes easier and easier because, you know, you're going to learn how to drive. You're going to learn about that bus when you get to your training school or when you do your training. You know, why kill yourself over just the written test? So the important thing about the written test is learn the numbers. Remember the numbers. You know, a good number of it is going to be common sense. You know, like, you know, taking turns and giving right-of-ways and maneuvering. That's all going to be common sense. You know, just like taking a Class C. But where a lot of people mess up is the numbers. Remember if you're doing air brakes, remember your pressure numbers. Remember your cut in, your cut out, your your minimums for your pop up, your minimums for your alarm, all that good stuff. Remember your numbers. That's going to be a large part of your test, and it's also going to be a large part of your skills as well. So once you pass the written and you get your learner's permit, you're going to have to do your training. I think for the state of California, it's 40 hours of training behind the wheel, basically. So once you get your 40 hours behind the wheel of training, then you can go take your skills course. So what I find where a lot of people, so the skill course is made up of 3 sections. You have your pre-trip, then you have your, or I should say, no, you have your brake test, then you have your pre-trip inspection, and then you have your actual skills course. So the pre-trip, your brake test, just remember the numbers. Remember the numbers. You know, you don't have to spend a lot of time on the pre-trip. And what makes it hard is in the state of California, there is no curve when it comes to those tests. You either pass or you fail. So when you first get there, you take the brake test. If you fail the brake test, you fail. You got to come back and redo the whole thing. Same thing with the inspection, same thing with the skills. If you fail one of those tests in that sequence, You fail all of them. You can't just barely pass or not pass one and then move on. You got to know it all. So again, when it comes to brake tests, know your numbers. They're gonna ask you the same deal. You're gonna have to do your cut in, your cut out, your governor cut in. You're gonna have to do your warning, your pop up, your all those. You're gonna have to know those numbers. So know your numbers. Every day, especially if you're in training for a place that's a school, like Greyhound or one of those other companies, or even Metro. If they got their schools, they're gonna drill you on remembering those numbers. You gotta remember those numbers. After that, once you pass the brake test, you can move on to the pre-trip inspection. Now, I got my bus here, my little piggy bank bus. I love these things. The important things to remember about your pre-trip inspection is be as thorough as possible. Go over everything. Don't just look at the tire and be like, oh, here's the tire, behind here is the brake, behind here is the suspension. No, break it down. So what in California, and I'm sure it's the same in most states, what they do is they judge you not by what you don't point out, they judge you by what you mention. So more information is better than few information. They don't want to hear brakes. They want to hear, this is the caliper, this is your plate, this is your brake master control, this is, your brake lines, which goes up to, your pump or whatever. They want to see your suspension. You can be like, all right, here is, here's my leaf or my bellow or, whatever, this is where it attaches to the frame, this is where it attaches to the lower swing arm, and the lower swing arm is connected to the drop, I can't remember it all right now, your drop pin and your whatever. They want to know as much as possible. Another good thing is when you're doing your pre-trip inspection, don't just say it, point it out. So when you're like, all right, I'm going to check my bolts, put your hand on each bolt and physically touch it and make sure it's tight. Okay. When you're going through your containers, your luggage containers, open them up, physically look at them, touch them, checking the springs, checking for the light, checking to make sure my surface is clear. Touch things so that they know that you're not just looking at things and you're just memorizing a book. You actually know where it is, you know what it is when you touch it and stuff like that. Know your engine compartment, know how to open it, know how to close it, know what looks unusual, understand the basic parts of the engine, be able to point out the engine. And he goes, I've seen it where some test proctors are like, okay, give me the basics. No, don't give them the basics. Don't just say that it has an alternator, it has a block, it has an air pressure. No, tell them as many parts as you can, because the more you mention, the more points you get. Be like, here's the alternator, here's the alternator belt, here are the wires that connect to the alternator or generator. They're not frayed. I'm checking to make sure that they're connected. It's all solid. Here's the air pump. I'm checking to check the tension on the freaking belt on the pump and the connectors on that pump and the cables, the hoses that connect to that. Here's the freaking water pump. I'm checking the belt, and it's gear driven, it's belt driven, it's whatever. You want to point all of that stuff out. The more information, the more points you're gonna get. Like in California, you can get, I think, a maximum of like 80 points, and you need at least like 60 points to pass, something like that. So the more stuff you tell them, the more information, the more points you get. So, you want to make sure the bus is straight and level. You want to check your freaking radiator. Touch as much as you can so you know where it is. You know what it is. You know how to check. Don't just say, oh, this is my oil dipstick. Unscrew the oil dipstick. Pull it out. Look at it. This is my freaking power steering pump. Unscrew the power steering pump reservoir. Look at the level. Check it. They want to see all of that. Another big issue where people mess up is when you get to the other side of the bus and you start walking down. A lot of proctors are going to be like, oh, is it the same thing on the same side? So they may tell you, they don't want to waste their time looking at the same stuff, and what's going to happen is you're going to miss stuff. Not everything that's on the left side that's on the right, the passenger side, is going to be on the driver's side. So if there's something that's different, make sure you point it out. For example, on Greyhound buses, on the front driver's side, in the front, this is where you're going to find all your fuses. You're going to find the latch to open up the spare tire bin, and you're going to find your trailing arm and your connecting arm for your front steering in here. So if you just say, hey, yeah, all that stuff is there, that's not telling them anything. You gotta physically open it up. You're gonna have to touch it, tell them where it is, show them where it is. They're gonna want to know where your window washer fluid is. That's gonna be all right here. If you don't show it to them, if you don't tell them, they're not gonna give you the points for it. So you got to make sure to be as thorough as possible. And same thing when you're going down the tire, you're going down the side. Even though they'd be like, yeah, you can skip it, just do a brief one. That just helps you. Same thing with on some buses, on the right hand side is the radiator. Some buses, the radiator is at the top, sometimes it's on the side. So if it's, you don't mention it, they're not going to give you the points for it. So you got to be as thorough as possible. Check your windows, check your deal. If it's some buses, the whatchamacallit, all your chains and your extra fire extinguishers, they're on one side, but they're not on the other side. Make sure you point them out. As much information as you can get is going to get you past that pre-trip inspection. Same thing with the windshield wipers. Make sure you grab the windshield wipers, you pull it off, you look at the blades, you make sure that it has spring tension. You check your lights, you check the levelness of your bus. You check the front end, you check the license plate, make sure the license plate is secure, make sure the lights are working properly, cycle the lights. Check every light when you cycle them. Make sure you know where the lights are. Make sure you know how to turn on your flashers, how to turn on your turn signals, all that good stuff. Make sure you're mentioning the window sills. Make sure you're mentioning the roof. Make sure you're mentioning the side of the bus, each latch. Make sure you're mentioning your ADA, each tire, your tag wheel, your main wheel. Make sure you mention stuff that that's hard to see or you can't see it as well. Make sure you mention the frame. Make sure you mention, your drivetrain, all that good stuff that even if you can't see it, where it is. You understand how your bus works, and that's what they're looking for. It's the same thing with trucks. It's the same thing with all of that stuff. They want to know that from front to back. You don't have to be a mechanic. You don't have to explain exactly how everything works, but you got to have a basic understanding. So if you can see it, you can't see it, it's underneath, still explain it. You want to get the most points as you can on this bus in order to pass that pre-trip. Now, the third part's going to be your, whatchamacallit, it's going to be your skills. So the skills is just another little thing. If you went through a good training school, they got you on the skills. I'll do another video explaining some of the skills that you're going to have to come across. But other than that, it's pretty simple. If you've been training, if you've been driving, the skills are just the same. I'll go over a brief description of the skills that we have here in California. It might be the same, it might be different for you. I'll do that in another video because this video is getting a little long. And so those are my basic tips for for passing your written and your air brakes and your pre-trip. So like I said, I'll do another video for your skills. All right. So again, keep sending questions. Keep asking. Anything I can help you guys with, I'll try and help you guys with. All right. It's your boy Otaku Phil, and I'll talk to you guys later.